Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. Before we get started, I want to share a couple of things that have been added onto my Linktree website. So if you've ever been on the Instagram or Facebook, my social media platforms at OuddlyEnoughPodcast, there's a little link to Linktree where you will see all of the different ways you can engage with the show. So it'll take you to the various platforms that my podcast is hosted on. It will also take you to a couple of other pages such as YouTube. And in addition, I wanted to shout out that I will be adding some merch on there because I know I shared recently the Can't Never Could t-shirt, and I know some folks are wanting one of their own, and also wanted to create a place to put some of those wonderful, encouraging phrases that we use on the show as well. So I currently have one mug that's up there that I just designed. So I want you to go check it out. Let me know what you think. You can order straight from the site that it links you out to. So I wanted to shout that out first before we get started. And as we continue on this Goal Getter series, as promised, this week we're going to be talking about time. Where does the time go? No, really. Do you know where the time goes? You ought to know. That's what we're going to really focus on today, is honing in on the concept of time and understanding how we're spending our time and understanding where some of those opportunities are. So what we talked about in the beginning of this series was we started with purpose. And in order to align with that purpose, we need to set goals in order to get there. We're going to need to acquire some habits to be able to achieve those goals. But before we even get started, on the notion of habits, I thought it was very, very important to first take a look at time so that we're understanding how we're spending it. And we're going to do an exercise here in just a second to challenge how we perceive time. Before we get started with the framework of today on time, I have my lovely assistant here, Kevin. Say hi to the Pod Squad, Kevin.
Hey, Pod Squad.
I pulled him out of bed this morning to run this little exercise with me. So it's one that I welcome you to participate in as well. So what we're going to be doing here, and I'm going to be participating with Kevin, is I am going to start my timer. We're both going to close our eyes, and we are going to open our eyes when we feel like a minute has passed. So I'm going to play some light music, so you're not allowed to count, okay? No counting, no cheating. And I'm going to start my watch, and you're going to hear some silence. So don't make it weird. Do it with us, okay?
So just open my eyes when...
Open your eyes when you feel like a minute's passed. If my eyes are still closed, just be cool, and vice versa. Okay. I'll be cool too, okay?
Deal.
Let's do this. All right. Let me start the music. And go. Wow. So
I almost fell asleep.
I opened my eyes at 35 seconds, and Kevin, you opened yours at 1 minute and 7 seconds. So maybe somewhere in the middle we got the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for participating. And I wanted to do that exercise because I've done that in a facilitation session before, and it's always really fun because you'll get people standing up after 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and sometimes you get the outliers that stand up after a minute and get a little days going over there with their daydreaming. So one of the things that we experienced recently was my car alarm went off, and I had no way of getting the panic button to stop. And a quick Google search let me know that after 3 minutes, it stops on its own. And did those 3 minutes feel like 3 minutes?
Felt like a half hour.
It felt like a half hour.
7:30 in the morning.
So time is such an interesting thing when we really stop to think about it and how we spend it and how we perceive a minute, how we perceive 3 minutes, and how we perceive 24 hours in a day. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Thank you to my wonderful partner here, Kevin. Appreciate your time. And we will go ahead and continue on. So say bye to Kevin.
Bye. Bye, Kevin.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for participating in that activity. I hope that you did. I also encourage doing it with your significant other. That was a fun little exercise that I got to share with Kevin this morning with you all. When we think about the concept of time, it's so interesting to really hone in on what that looks like for you. So when we did that exercise just moments ago, for some of you, maybe a minute felt like 20 seconds, 30 seconds if you're like me. For Kevin, he extended over a little bit into the 1 minute mark. But really, when we think about time, it's such a funny thing. And often we think that there's not enough of it. We wish that there was more. While yes, time is a finite resource, and we really don't get to have a particular minute or moment back, I challenge the notion of there's not enough time to get the good stuff done in a 24-hour day. That's what we're going to talk about today, is really challenging that notion. So there's 1,440 minutes in a day. So let's say of those, if you're awake for 16 hours in a day, that gives you not quite 1,000 minutes in a day. Now, to me, that seems like plenty of time to make some magic happen. But why do we feel like we fall short? Why do we still feel like we don't have enough time in the day? And what I'm going to talk about today is, have you ever really considered performing a personal time audit? And I know auditing sounds like a fancy business term, or maybe something that you hope the IRS never knocks on your door to do. Tax season, I know that one's relevant. But think about the things that you already do audit. Whether you realize it or not, there's lots of things that we do on a regular basis to audit our activities and to audit our performance, right? So if you're like me, in the beginning of the year, you may take some time to consider your spending of the last year, audit all of the different categories and spend that you made to be able to produce your budget for this year and produce your savings goals and things of that nature. A few weeks ago, we audited our purpose statement. We took a look at that purpose statement. We know that it can change. We know that we can give it a tune-up as we change through different phases of life. So we audited that purpose statement. So now we're going to audit our time. We do auditing all the time, right? But I don't think we ever really intentionally sit down to take a look at what that looks like as far as how we're spending our time. I'm sure you work for a company that does it all the time too. Your company has a department or employs an outside vendor to help to understand the efficiencies and hope to increase that bottom line for your company. So when we don't realize our efficiencies and get real with ourselves, we don't have the opportunity to uncover those gaps, to boost that potential. And that's what this year is all about. No excuses. This is our year. So we are going to do that today. And you'll realize there's lots of great ways to audit your time. And I'm all about simplifying. So I wanted to give you all a couple of my favorites, some of which I've used in the past, but some of which I'm kind of starting to use now as I'm doing more research. So it's always good to get some fresh ideas of how to have a better understanding of how you're using your time. So first and foremost, step one, you better believe I'm going to have you reflect. I want you to write down your intention of why you are conducting this time audit, and not just because I'm making you or it's your homework, but really think about why. And maybe you're going to think about your purpose statement. I would imagine your why is somehow tied to that purpose statement. Why do I want to uncover more time in the day so that I can fulfill that potential that I've set my sights for? For instance, I had shared with you all my purpose statement included things like being more bold and more impactful in creating and sharing the mindset hacks that we explore in the podcast. So with my why in mind, if I'm going to be able to accomplish that, being more bold and being more impactful, I am ready to take a peek under the hood and see my realities of how I'm spending my time currently. So I really challenge you to track your activity. So once you've reflected, the next step is you're going to track your activity for the next 3, 5, or 7 days. Kind of look at your calendar and see what's realistic for you. Where I recommend first starting is if you have a smartphone, I have an iPhone, whatever smartphone you have, there's actually a function that allows you to see your screen time. So I encourage you, if you have that setting turned off, to turn it on so that for the next 3, 5, 7 days, you are tracking what you're doing while on screen. So that will cover that piece as far as which apps you're using, how much time you're spending on the social media apps, texting, calling, and that sort of thing. I can see in the week and in the day where I'm spending my time as far as on my phone at least, right? So it's telling me that I was down 39% from last week of screen time is the way that the iPhone calls it. So 26 minutes on social media is what I spent yesterday, 4 minutes on entertainment, 3 minutes on information and reading. So I know my realities, and I like to see that number went down, but day to day that number is a little sporadic. So that's one for me that is very helpful as far as kind of starting off with what kind of screen time am I using on my phone. And then outside of the functionality that your phone provides to you there, what I would recommend is this. So what I want you to do is you're going to create a tracking mechanism for the things that are outside of your phone. So things that you're doing day to day. So what I want you to do, I have a couple of options here I'll give you depending on the functionality you have on your phone or an application or a spreadsheet. So I'm going to first direct you to an app that I just discovered and I absolutely love, and it is called Toggl. And it's Toggl. And what you'll do within this app is it's really cool. I'll share in the link here how you can download it. It's free, first and foremost, which makes it one of my favorites if it's free. And what you do is you actually start and stop time depending on what you're doing throughout the day. So I will sit here and what I can see is this morning I was writing and recording this episode. And then I have a work project I started, and then I started doing some editing. I ran some errands, and it lets you start and stop so that you know exactly how much time you're spending on these activities that you are producing throughout the day. If you forget one, you can squeeze one in. At the end of the day, it gives you a bar chart and lets you know where you spent your time. You can categorize it and make it as granular as you'd like. And just having downloaded this app today, in fact, I'm really, really enjoying it. So Toggl is an app that allows you to track where your time's going throughout the day as far as not the applications in your phone. I mentioned your smartphone probably has that productivity application within it. So go ahead and launch that and get that going. Toggl is a way that you can kind of record everything else that goes on throughout your day. So that's a great app. If you're don't really want to go the app route, what I would recommend is either on a spreadsheet or in your journal, creating columns. And in those columns, I want you to jot down the activities you produce every single day. And what I recommend doing is in 30-minute intervals. This might feel a bit much, but only again for the next few days that we're tracking this, is maybe set an alarm on your phone for every 30 minutes to take account of what you're doing. So maybe this morning I started checking my email, okay? 8 o'clock, check my email. 8:30, my alarm goes off. Am I still checking my email? No. I made my bed, I started some laundry, right? So just allowing yourself to understand what you're doing throughout the day in those intervals. And then from there, we'll take you to the next step. So whether you're using the Toggl app, whether you're using an Excel spreadsheet, if that's your style and your method, or a journal, what I want you to do is make sure that you are recording all the activities that you are producing over the next few days. And the next thing that I want you to do is review and reflect. Review your 3, 5, or 7 day challenge that I just appointed to you. And I want you to highlight or jot down 3 activities that occur most each day. The activities that are occurring most each day are called our time suckers or our time robbers. Not that these activities are necessarily non-productive or harmful, but if not taken the right intention behind setting the time to do those activities, we can go down a wormhole, right? And we can maybe lose sight of our priority for the day or that purpose of what we're trying to accomplish in the grand scheme of things, right? So I want you to reflect on this. What is consuming your time? Is it consistent with my purpose, my intention, and my why? Is it helping me push the needle, push the envelope? For me, I'll share with you when I did this exercise, my time suckers are things like checking my inbox, browsing social media, daydreaming about travel, day drinking, just on the weekends, I promise. On occasion, sleeping in. That's a time sucker. It is important that you know yours, and it's important that you call them out. Call them out, shout them out, and let them know that you're going to get a handle on them. Because again, remember, we've got big goals for this year. We're shooting our shot. So now that you see your areas of opportunity and you see some of those things that are your time suckers, and I did a poll on social media to try to understand where you all are coming from as well with yours. So I found things in common like browsing the inbox, just hopping on social media and mindlessly scrolling, going down a wormhole, watching the news or reflecting on my news app, sleeping in, right? Those are all common ones. So once you hone in on yours, what I want you to do, and we're going to get into habits a little bit in the future here with this series, but I want you to start thinking about your areas, your categories of time suck, as we call it. And I want for you to start to think about how you can overcome that time suck. For instance, for me, one of mine was definitely checking my inbox. And a good example of how to kind of manage that a little bit more so I'm not constantly checking my email is allotting 2 times a day, 2 10-minute periods where I'm going to check my email. And it takes practice, because I'll tell you, when I started writing, I started responding to emails and I'm like, I'm giving this advice, I've got to practice it. It's not easy, so it's something that takes practice. So for me, that is how I'm going to start to overcome that. I'll tell you, another one of mine, the social media scroll. It'll get you. So what I've done is, and I'm sure your phone lets you do these things as well, is I have limited my use of social media apps to 45 minutes a day. It'll give me a 15-minute warning, it'll give me a 5-minute warning, and I'm done. And mind you, part of my social media presence is interacting with you in the podcast community. So it's making me use that time more wisely when I have it to make sure I'm getting out of it what I want out of it. So I encourage you to utilize things like that. And if you are going into social media, know why you're going in there and don't let yourself lose track of time. Set your watch and say, okay, I've got a 15-minute break between my next meeting. I'm going to use 3 of those to see what's up in the world, see what's going on out there. Set your alarm and stick to it. So I think that once you have the realities, you've done the tracking, you know where you're spending your time, you can identify that time that can be spent differently. And we'll get into that with habits of how to pivot that time and how to flip the switch on that time. But it first starts with taking account of where the time is going. So my challenge to you this week is to audit your time. Use one of those methods that we utilize. There's lots of apps. I'll tag them all in the bio for this episode. There's simple spreadsheets, simple logging, just so we know where it's going. Where does the time go? You ought to know. And we're going to find that out this week. So once you find that out and start to ponder on how that time could be used differently, or how you can perhaps look to cut that time in half on the social media, cut that emailing time in half, cut that TV time, cut that sleeping in time, you're going to start to see that there is enough time in the day. But it takes intention to map it out in such a way that's going to allow you for success, that's going to allow you to start that gratitude practice you're wanting to start, that's going to allow you to start to look at that big ambitious goal that you have and see that it's more achievable with the time to spend towards it. Whether you're looking for more time to read that book you started a year ago, you're looking for the time to Plan that get together with your friends on Zoom to connect, on a book club. Whatever you're looking for the time to do, I promise you that it's there. And as I said during the series, we're going to break it down in bite-sized pieces. So start with auditing your time so you know where you're at. And now that we've looked at time, our next step along the journey is we are eventually going to use that newfound time to create some very helpful habits that are going to help us to produce these high achieving results that we want to attain this year. But before we get there, we are going to look at our environment around us. Is it positioned in a way to help us achieve our goals, or is it not? Or is there some areas for opportunity? So can't wait to get into that topic with y'all. And hands are in the pile so that we can all find our realities and find the potential that is already here and the time that is already here to make it happen. So thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please share it with a friend. I would love to enhance this community and continue to build upon it and continue to get all of the wonderful perspectives in one place so that we can share our journey to excellence. We can really hold each other accountable. So, man, if you're not following yet on the social media platforms, I hope to see you on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at OuddlyEnoughPodcast, where we'll share our journeys together there. As I mentioned before, starting a little merch website too. So Linktree in my bio that you'll find on all of my platforms, as well as in this episode, that will showcase all of the great ways you can connect with the podcast, just featuring that new merchandise tab there, because I'm really excited to share just some great inspirational swag with you all. So check it out. Hope to see you there. Thank you so much, everyone. Much love. Stay awesome. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.